Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Mosaic podcast. I have the privilege today of being with a dear friend of mine that I don't get to talk to or see enough because she is so global and the work that she's doing is so big that I miss her. And it's just a pleasure and honor. And thank you for being here, first of all, Sonia.
Thank you.
Let me just, for those of you who have been hiding in a cave and don't know who this woman is, I have the honor of being with Sonia Choquette, who is a celebrated worldwide author and a New York Times bestseller. She's a teacher and consultant who insists that trusting your vibes is the key to life. She's an enchanting storyteller, and she's known for her delightful sense of humor and adept skill in quickly being able to shift people out of pain and frustration into a happier experience. Sonia is inspiring a global consciousness movement around her belief that we are all divine beings endowed with six senses that guide us through life. She teaches that when we rely on our innate sixth sense, the decisions we make are the most authentic, well-informed, healthful, and soul-satisfying decisions possible. Get this, she is the author of 27 international best-selling books that have been published in over 40 countries. Because of her gifts, she is sought out by both individuals and organizations, hoping to improve their experience and their abilities to perform at optimal levels through empowerment and transformation. She's an avid traveler and prides herself on her passionate pursuit of learning and growing each day. In her spare time, whatever that is, right? She enjoys dancing, playing the piano, fashion, art and design, and practices yoga and Pilates to stay in shape. Sonia loves everything about Paris and currently calls it her home. Sonia, welcome to the Mosaic podcast. Thank you for being here.
I'm excited to be with you, Danny. Thank you for inviting me.
It is my honor to have you. We're going to start out a little bit different. When you were growing up as a kid, what is it you thought you would do?
This.
Wow.
I'm just a rare person who always knew what I would do.
And how did that happen? Did you have a mom or a dad that was into this type of stuff? I mean,
Well, yeah, I definitely lived in a family that oriented around intuition as our primary way of knowing. I mean, I think it was my mom mostly who was very psychic, she was separated from her family when she was 12 years old during the war. She's Romanian, ended up in a German camp. She was liberated at 15, married my father, who was a young 20-year-old American soldier. And during the war, she became deaf because of the conditions she was subjected to. She lost her family. She wasn't in school. She had no traditional support system. So what she resorted to was listening to her intuition for safety and guidance, and just instilled that in her children. There were 7 of us, as the most important focus of your life.
Wow.
And I just was raised with that primary message: trust your vibes. Above all, trust your vibes. Don't trust your brain. Don't trust others. Don't trust what people say. Don't trust appearances. Trust your vibes. It's your spirit. It's divine. And by the time I was 12, I was already doing intuitive readings for people. By the time I was 15, I was teaching my first class.
Wow. Wow. So not your standard, I'm going to grow up and want you to be a doctor or a lawyer or a
Not at
dancer.
all. I always, it always just was the thing to do. So I think my soul just knew my path. And I just never questioned it, but I did struggle with protecting my intentions when the world didn't particularly support them. It was kind of an opposite thing for me in terms of, I went to college. I got a degree in right brain learning and religious studies, and trying to find academic legitimacy to what I knew was soul legitimacy.
Yeah.
I went all the way to PhD. I think academics failed me completely, but they impressed the world. They didn't impress me.
Yeah. Well,
So,
you had a base source of knowledge that they didn't understand, most likely, right?
well, I feel like we all have a base source of insight that we are taught at a very early age in most traditional environments to distrust, and it's to our detriment.
Yeah.
My good fortune isn't that I was particularly more intuitive than anyone else.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that at all. My good fortune was that it was presented to me and protected as the most valuable resource I have. And that's what I try to teach other people.
How fabulous. So, but in growing up, were there times when the other kids made fun of you or teased
Oh
you?
God, yes. I went to a Catholic school, so I definitely had to go underground very early. My outward intuitive psychic abilities were not appreciated. It's funny, I tell people, if you've been discriminated against, if you're transgender or gay or a person of color, I have great empathy, but try being a psychic. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody discriminates against that. I mean, nobody's on board with that one. I don't care who you are. But I appreciate the rejection because it taught me that I could not thrive in this world if I ever sought approval. I would
Wow.
die. So
Wow.
I got over pretty young. It was either seek approval and be a fake or be real and forfeit approval. So I chose be real.
But I mean, first of all, that's a huge choice. What age were you when you chose that? Because most people choose the other way. Most people say,
Yeah,
I
you're
want the
right.
approval of people. And so I'll put aside who I am. And when I look into the world now, I see a lot of people who have a lot of the things that they've been looking for, but not many people who have themselves because
That's
you put that on
exactly
par.
right.
And,
To answer your question, I think that it was in high school where, that's where so many of us, kind of jump ship for approval anyway. Such a
yeah.
toxic environment. But for me, high school was peculiar because I was truly very psychic. So my teachers would come for readings
Wow.
and they would be on the lowdown about it.
Wow.
Um, and I just really saw, because I just started doing intuitive readings for people so young, how miserable adults were.
Wow.
I saw how inauthentic they were. I ran into things as basically when I was a child still, doing readings for people who were married, having affairs, doing readings for people who hated their jobs, being people who were, I even was invited to do readings for a family whose parents had been murdered. So this was a lot of very difficult to assimilate and overwhelming information for me, because even though I was very psychic, I was 15 emotionally.
Yeah.
I was a child, and my own parents were crazy too. I mean, whose aren't? But so what I did was I decided to find refuge in spirituality. I started studying metaphysics. I remember just devouring books, Catherine Ponder and original metaphysicians, at Ouspensky even. Reading very profound books as a very young child at the library.
What age were you reading Ouspensky? I mean, those
I was
are
13.
oh my God.
I was 13, but I was so desperate to find some validation, that because the world that most people seek validation from, I had a sneak preview into, and it was a crazy world. I mean, adults and all the world of adult approval, I didn't care for their approval. They were crazy. Their lives sucked and they were miserable. So that was a blessing, even though I didn't know it at the time. My own parents they had 7 children, and my mom, being a child of the Holocaust, was mentally crazy. My dad was overwhelmed. He was just a farmer. I mean, they didn't have the psychological skills to deal with. So I was pretty much on my own.
So I've heard you speak in the past because I've had the honor of calling you my friend over the course of the years, and I've
Mm-hmm.
had the privilege of hearing you speak in the past of teachers that had come that were really beautiful teachers that would help you. Were
Yeah.
those teachers in this realm? Did you have people that guided
Yes,
you?
I had two teachers. I was very fortunate. My first teacher was actually a friend of my mother's. He was a phenomenal psychic from England named Charlie Goodman. And I met him when I was 12, and I studied with him for a number of years. He taught me the psychic arts in the tradition of the Theosophists of England. So I was apprenticed more than anything. I learned clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. I learned meditation. I learned how to raise objects, and I saw teleportation. I saw things that most people have no idea exist. And this was all but from 12 to 16. So that was amazing. Then I had a tremendous metaphysical master teacher from about 14 to about 20.
Wow.
And he taught me the intuitive arts, the power of consciousness, the power of your mind creates. And so they were like my spiritual parents.
Wow. One of the things that I want this podcast to do is help people to see that the things we initially see are not the only things that are.
Exactly.
And in my book, The Mosaic, it's only when Mo starts to listen to the people that he meets along the way that he realizes he doesn't see at all what is. But what I'm so excited for them for listeners to hear now, to be like a fly on the wall and just hear, is not only is it our ability to just listen to people, there are people like yourself who see things that we just don't see. And to be open to the parameters of this world being slightly different and coming to people for guidance, because you work with people, right? And
what I do is I consider myself a teacher and a mirror to activate within other people, every person I meet, the insight, the perception, the depth of spirit that you write about in Mosaic. It is an inner sight. It is a vision of the heart and the vision of the inner imagination, not just the physical senses, which are mostly influenced by outer control, other people's opinions. So again, I'll say I'm not exceptional. I'm just skilled, and especially now devoted to teaching other people to become connected to their lost senses, and to develop the ability for them to both work and to trust them. You wrote the Mosaic because you know that, and to me, the message of your book was to develop this inner sight, to look past appearances. That was the point of that is the point of the message.
Yes. What would you see if you could see what you don't see is really and how do you see that? And yet there are some who would probably think that you're either born with that gift or you don't, or you're not, but you actively are training people how to unleash that within themselves.
Well, it's almost like this. Here's how I feel about it. You have a sixth sense, which is the first. It's the first to develop. It's the last to be acknowledged.
Wow.
It is like a light that lightens, that illuminates your life. I know where the switch is. Wow. I know why it got turned off, but it never got, it's just turned off. It's not cut out. So I teach you where the switch is and then re-educate you in how to trust it.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So, like, were your parents on board with you? I mean, they taught you about this trust in your vibes, but did they ever think, oh my God, she's getting too weird now? And did you have friends when you were in school? I mean, could people, like, how unrelatable were you? Because a lot of times when people get into the spiritual path or get into stuff like this, we become like a circus show.
Right. Well, I was fortunate in that my family and my mother in particular, it was a family culture, and I had a big family.
Yeah.
So I never felt alone. I always felt like everybody in my family The priority was not what did you see, say, do, learn, hear. It was what does your vibe say?
Wow.
So I always had that cocoon of protection. I also my mom, we grew up, I'm a baby boomer. And if you're a baby boomer, there was a ton of kids everywhere.
Right.
And my house was the happy house. You know, my house was because my mom was a child when she had children. So when we were children and teenagers, she played with us. She wasn't maybe so much the great mom, but she certainly was the great playmate.
Right.
So I did have some friends who had, and they were interesting because my best friends were both from families, they had essentially no conscious parents at home. They came to our house. So these were kids that were not in my school. I was the pariah at school. I was the weirdo at school, but I had this alternate reality, this alternate universe going on, which protected me from what could have been a lot of shame.
Yes.
I didn't go through a lot of shame. I did become an introvert, and I still am. I'm not that social in that I don't need to convert anyone. It's like, whatever.
Yeah. I loved listening to you on another show that I listened to before as I was preparing, and someone said, "How did you deal with people that don't agree with what you're doing?" And you just said someone came up to you and spoke and said, "I think what you're saying is bullshit," basically, right? And you said,
Yeah.
"That's great."
Yeah.
And he said, "How would you convince me?" No need to. You're okay.
Exactly. First of all, it's futile.
Right.
I'm not going to convince anybody. If the lights out are on in your universe and you're okay with that, why would you want me to turn them on? Only people searching for the light are going to want to find it. It took some years in maturity and a lot. I'm sort of the Rodney Dangerfield of the spiritual world. I have definitely gotten no respect. I have definitely been dismissed and I'm not spiritual enough. I'm not, I don't have enough spiritual PhDs, or I've been called whipped cream and lollipops, and I just make people uncomfortable.
Well, you also make people happy. I mean, you are
Yeah.
beloved amongst the people that know of you. People love you. And so you are Rodney Dangerfield on one level, but anybody
among the scholastics.
Right. But anybody who knows you has fallen in love with you because you're intoxicating.
Well, that's very generous of you. I think what people love is that I'm a clear mirror and they can fall in love with themselves in my presence, because I reflect back to you the wonder of who you are, and that you can trust and rely on your true self. And it's not that complicated. Wow. It's such it's sort of I'm the anti-guru. It's like you can trust yourself. Yeah. But with that comes responsibility.
So of the 27 books that you've written and all the talks that you've given and all the people that you've spoken to, if you were to condense it down to one simple
statement,
what would that statement be?
Trust your vibes.
Wow.
And I'll tell you why. It's the right word. Your heart is a conscious organ that is connected to your spirit, and it communicates to you not through language, not through the outer senses, but through vibration. Yeah. And that vibration we then have first pay attention to and have to interpret. We have to feel it and interpret that it is a guiding compass for us. And it's not intellectual, and it never will be. It is a feeling-based compass. But when we listen to it, when we notice, pay attention, listen to it, it opens your inner sight. It opens and puts you on the right path. It opens, as you so beautifully wrote in your book, it opens you to a reality that your ego simply is not capable of seeing. It doesn't have the bandwidth. Yeah. It's like an AM radio, and your soul and spirit is broadband. So
So,
that's what I'm teaching, and that's what you're teaching.
well, thank you. To be in the same sentence with you teaching it is, I appreciate. But to the world, what would you say? Because the world outside around us is boastful and loud and talks about all the things that they've done, and this concept of being a mirror that simply is just a reflection back, that has no ego involved in it of this is what I want you to see. A mirror just holds up this image that says, take a look and see how beautiful you are, right?
Right. That is my mission. That is what my soul's about. But it also will reflect what you're not. And if you're attached to what you're not, if you are invested in what you're not, it's uncomfortable.
So how do you get people to, first of all, understand that mirror, and second of all, to celebrate what they are and to not be scared of letting go of what they're not?
The way I teach is very different than most people. I'm playful. I play with you. I invite you to play with me, and the ego can't participate in the games I present.
I
You
love it.
can only find the resource to play the games I show you. I invite you to join me by calling up your spirit, and the feeling that happens when you actually connect with your spirit is like throwing the lights on the Christmas tree. Your eyes light up, your face lights up, your energy expands, your laugh comes back. And it's a physical, visceral, organic transformation that is happening in you. It's not information I'm selling you to buy.
Yeah, I
I
love
am
it.
creating a shift of experience that you have internally that's all very natural. And so then I leave you to go with that and say, keep doing more of this, and you will have more connection to that, which is who you really are. So that's what's different about me. It's just, I not only trust me, but I trust you. I
I
trust
love
the
that.
spirit in you will wake up. Absolutely. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what country you're in, what education. I trust that if my spirit will invite your spirit to play, and I don't threaten you, your spirit will play with me.
I love that. I gave a talk a couple days ago at a place, and what I realized was, just like the book has a story,
Mm-hmm.
and then but the space between the words of the story speaks louder to me now than the words themselves. I
Right.
realized in the talk that I was giving, and I'm asking this as a question. I realized in the talk that I was giving that my words are just a camouflage for what's
Yeah.
actually happening. It's a camouflage to occupy the mind so that the heart transmission can come across.
Exactly. You're transmitting and activating their hearts because we're resonant beings. And when a person's heart is activated, they find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
That
I,
is what they're looking for. It's themselves. So you're absolutely right. And your book does that too.
thank you.
The transmission comes through the story.
Thank you so much. And I love hearing you say that, because I've looked to you for that and felt that from you, because you're this beautiful, joyful, dancing, celebrating, and you call it like an oddball from the scholastics, but it's always been the things that you do are less important because they're really just meant almost to occupy the mind and get you out of the mind
Right.
so that the
And
mind doesn't resist and the heart
what
can just open.
I say your mind is your pet.
Yeah,
It's your barking dog. Now, you don't shoot the dog.
right.
You take the dog for a run. You play with the dog until the dog relaxes.
Yeah,
And then the spirit comes out. So I'm very metaphorical. I use a lot of imagery. I speak in visuals. I speak in story like you, because that's how we learn. We
you're
don't
so kind
learn,
to me.
we learn in story.
Yes.
Our lives we make sense of our lives in story.
Yeah.
And I just intuitively know that. I just know that.
So let's switch focus a little bit because you're starting to compliment me more than I'm realized you would do. This is your time, okay?
No,
But thank you.
I'm just really acknowledging any
The
tool that
connection.
works.
Yes, yes.
And I am really an advocate for any tool that works.
I love it.
And the tools that I think work most profoundly are not academic. They're not scholastic. They're not intellectual. We have enough information. And it slides off like eggs on Teflon.
I agree
We
with you.
need experiences.
Yes. And it almost, for me, I feel like there's a paradigm shift that's happening, that this vertical reality of people telling us what to do is disappearing because we don't like to be told
Absolutely.
what to do. And we just need to be together, like in the singing and dancing that you do. We just need to come together and allow ourselves to relax into the spirit that will naturally lift us up. Does that
Well,
make sense?
what I feel is that what we don't do, and that I have been so profoundly committed to doing, is we don't trust ourselves. And I'm not
Yeah,
talking about the little selves. I'm talking about the big, deep
totally.
spirit self. And I do. I not only trust myself, my spirit, but I trust your spirit.
Love that.
And I trust the spirit in anyone that I engage with. And I speak only to the spirit of those that I engage with. Their barking dogs don't scare me anymore.
Yeah,
They just don't.
I love that.
And that's just wisdom that comes with a lot of dog bites. You know, eventually I realized it's a dog bite. That's to let your dog bite me. You know, no thanks. It's you're not your questions aren't coming from a sincere place. So I'm not going to answer them because it's just sparring and I don't need you to believe me. But I do speak to people, to the true self. And I do acknowledge the true self, no matter who I'm speaking to. And they will arrive, they'll speak back at that level. And if those who want to stay at that intellectual, competitive, me against you level, they go away because the force of the spirit is greater than the force of the ego. Then they might go away grumbling, calling me names, but I'm okay with that.
Yes.
I'm okay with that. I don't pay attention. My own barking dog is a poodle named Fifi, and she goes shopping and buys nice clothes, and so I'm fine. My barking dog is well fed. You know, I feel like we need to make peace with our egos, but they're not the boss.
So what I noticed in growing up, because it's so interesting, you grew up the way you grew up and you were encouraged in that. I went at 5 or 6 years old to introduce my mom to my closest friend. And I said, Mom, I want to show you the person that I play with all the time. And she looked at me and said, Danny, there's nobody standing there.
Really? See how natural you were
And
there already?
and it was and she said, you can't talk about this to people. They'll lock you up and think you're crazy. And
Oh, I'm sorry.
so for a while, I put my friend on the side. But what I see in that is not my story as much as that choice that you made to be authentic to yourself versus the acceptance of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I commented on it when you said it, because most people make the other choice. Most people think, I want to be accepted by people. I want to fit in. I want to follow the models that the world's making. And when I look back, I look at a world where people find what they're looking to find. And most people seem like they're just looking to find money and what they think will bring happiness, but doesn't. But I don't see a lot of...
They're looking for the values they were false values they were sold.
Yes. But when I look at those people, I don't see people that have found contentment or inner peace.
You
And
can
so,
tell.
yeah, you can by just
They have
looking
no
in
light in their eyes.
Totally. And so you're one of these beautiful souls that just is almost like a nomad or a gypsy that touches into those places, right?
I am definitely that for sure. I am a free-spirited traveler. And the thing I had and what I tried to provide is I had people who believed in me.
Yes.
And that is my mission and has been my mission since I was 12 years old, publicly.
Wow.
Like, I believe you. Your family of origin is like the AM radio and you're the broadband, but I get you.
Wow.
And that's my purpose. My purpose is not to win approval. My purpose is to turn lights on, because the barking dogs of the world will kill the planet and each other.
Yeah. And they are.
And the reason why is when you are in your ego, other people become things, dangerous things that have to be eliminated.
Yes.
And when you're in your spirit, you feel the deep connection to everything, and that you belong, and that we all do. So you become protective of your spirit and the spirit of others and the planet. And to me, it's the only sane way forward.
Yeah. I remember the first time I met you, and my feelings haven't changed from that first time.
New York.
There was an intoxication that happens and I speak about it a lot, that when you walk past the flower that just has an aroma, suddenly everything in your world stops for a moment, because you can't do anything but smell the flower.
Oh, you're so generous in that acknowledgement. Thank you.
But that's true. And so when I listen to you speak now, it's still that same thing, because the questions that I'm asking of how do you really come back to how does the flower open up and just give its aroma, and those who smell it become intoxicated, and they start to see something that they never saw before, which is there to always see.
Yeah. And that's why, honestly, sorry to embarrass you, but that's what I loved about Mosaic.
Thank
Is
you.
because it's a book about going from looking at to looking into,
Yes.
going from not seeing to recognizing.
Yes.
And if there's one thing we need to do to save ourselves, save our family, save our lives, it's that. And it's that simple.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And it's not an intellectual shift. It's an awakening of heart.
Yes.
But it does change your physical sensory apparatus to see, hear, sense, and feel at a more profound level.
Love it.
It's true.
It's as fundamental a shift as going from the thought that we have 5 senses to the thought that we have a 6th sense.
Right. To the actual recognition that we have a 6th sense, and that it's natural to all of us, and without it, we are handicapped in the most profound way.
Yeah.
Without it engaged, we are isolated, alone, and in danger.
Wow.
To me, that's the urgent message of my life, and always has been. And I'll dance and fire with anybody to keep that message going, because it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's just the truth.
And how more valuable could a truth be than that in a world where people are scared to know themselves? So first, we gotta understand that what's coming from within us is so valuable and beautiful,
Beautiful.
and it's also scary. So
Well, I have to say, I initially started out in this world telling people I was psychic. And oh my God, that word to this day sends people running for the hills. And I know why. Because the word is like a knife, and it cuts through everything. And it says and implies, I see you.
yeah,
And it frightens people.
yeah,
But what they don't realize is that what I see, or what our psychic, or what that means is our soulful I see, is that you are beautiful,
yes.
exquisite,
Wow.
and beautiful. So not just scary, but I've called myself an intuitive now. But the truth is, I'm psychic.
No, 100%. And I have a lot of psychic friends, as you know, and I've always wondered, why do they steer away from the word psychic? But it's
because of the profound, deep psychological bias in the culture against the soul, and against the feminine, and against personal empowerment. And it's like, why fight it? Just change the language.
change.
Dance around it.
Totally. And for me, it's even simpler than that. It comes down to a group of people who are scared to see themselves, because they spent all their time trying to camouflage themselves trying to not look at themselves by filling themselves with things that are not themselves. When they see somebody who says they're a psychic that they know can see into them, they get scared.
Right.
Because,
I call it, I'm the emperor. I'm the kid in the fairy tale, the emperor's new clothes.
yeah.
You know, the thing that I say about that is he's the one that says to the emperor, you're naked. And everybody looks at the kid, and everybody looks at the emperor, and the emperor looks at the kid, and everybody looks at each other, but the parade goes on.
Totally.
And I'm here to say, let's not let the parade go on.
Yeah.
Let's quit. Let's call BS on that, and let's start learning to be real.
So as we wind down, because I want to be sensitive to the time that we gave ourselves, okay? One of the questions that I really want to know from people, and I ask for people that have no voice and people that have voice, because you have a voice amongst the people of the world, but there are other people that don't have a voice. If there was one thing that you would want to say to the world without anger, that would be received without judgment, what would be that one thing that you would say?
I would go back to what I've said before. Trust your vibes. It's the language of your spirit, and it's not a verbal language. It's the energetic call of your soul to lead you, and that it's a beautiful, reliable compass that you have, that God gave you. Trust it.
I love that. And then the final question before we give you a chance to tell people how to get in touch with you, which I definitely want them to do. And I'm going to encourage people to, get involved in everything you're doing, because I just love you so much. And I love the work that you're doing and just what you've shared with us today. Is this the world that you see today that you always dreamed of handing down to future generations?
Well, to answer that, Danny, when we're born, any birthing involves a lot of very scary contractions. It's just the natural birthing process.
Yeah.
Where the container of the old is fighting the force of the new. And I see the way that the world is right now is that contraction of the old fighting the force and the intention of the new.
Yes.
And with breath and intention, the new life will burst through. So not to focus on the contractions, but to focus on the breath.
Fabulous.
And the new life. And that's definitely what I believe with my whole heart, share with everybody I'm blessed to share with, and pray for in every day of my life.
I love what Buckminster Fuller said. He said, you can't change the paradigm of the old paradigm with thinking of the old paradigm.
Right.
You have to create a new paradigm that makes the old paradigm obsolete.
Right.
And so one of the things that my dream is to be able to gather the data from the people that nobody speaks to and people that people do speak to, and bring people together in conversation to say, if we see this world as in transition, or because of who you are and the insight that you have, you answered it differently than most people. Most people will just say flat out, no, this isn't the world that's with all the turmoil and all the pain. I never dreamed this would be the world I would give to my kids. And so I asked them, if it's not, then what would be the first thing that you would do to sort of change that or adapt that to the world that you would like? Because if we continue doing what we're doing, we're going to continue to give the world to them the way it is, right?
Right.
So I know trust your vibes is your message. I know breathing through the contractions and not getting caught in the contractions. But what would be like for people hearing right now that said, I just want to take one step to change the world that I live in? What would be that one step?
Put your phone down.
Okay.
and really connect to yourself and another in interested, genuinely. Stop trying to be interesting and start being more interested.
Wow.
That's what I would say, because that'll make a big, palpable, emphatic difference to you and your immediate world right now.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So, Sonia, for people who want to get in touch with you, and if they don't, I'm going to call them to say, get in touch with this woman. This is the softness and the beauty of your message is what's needed at this time. And
Thank
so if
you.
people want to get in touch with you, how do they find you? What do they do? What are some things that are coming up that they can get involved with?
Well, what I invite people to do is come to my website, soniachoquette.net. And the first thing is I have a beautiful group of free tools that are really substantial, that'll help you get in touch with your spirit. That'll, meditation, a free ebook that's about joy. That's simple. It won't overwhelm you. I have coming out, finally, I don't even know why it took so long, but I finally created a Trust Your Vibes online course. But I watch how people do online courses, and they abandon ship. They forget. So I'm with this for the first time ever with an online course. I will have a weekly Facebook private group where I'll actually meet you there and walk you through the course so you don't abandon ship, and you meet kindred spirits, which is another problem. I feel like I'm all by myself.
Yeah.
So that's coming out right now. You can find out about that on my webpage, and it's there. So that's enough. That's a beginning. That's enough.
Fabulous. And I'll make sure that we communicate and connect, and I can put that data underneath where we're talking.
Okay.
So that people can get right to there. So
thank you.
Again, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for taking this time. You're a dear friend to me that I don't get to see enough of or speak to enough, but I want you to know there's someone in the back going, yay, yay, yay. For all
I am so grateful for that and receive it. I need it. I love it. And I thank you.
It's my honor. Okay, please get in touch with Sonia. For those of you who are interested, we'll have all the data here. She is a jewel, a gem, and just something that you want to just hold in your hands and hug and adore, because what you'll find out you're doing is you're hugging and adoring yourself. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Ciao.
Ciao. Okay, Danny, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let me get rid of this right here, and let me stop the recording.